All right, so picking up on page 168, about line 128. This is where Antiphates has just grabbed one of the men. So, Antiphates seized one man and tore him on the spot, making a meal of him. The other two leaped out of doors and ran to join the ships. Behind, he raised the whole tribe, howling. Countless Lastrygones, and more than men they seemed, gigantic when they gathered on the skyline, to shoot great boulders down from slings. And hell's own crashing rose and crying from the ships as planks and men were smashed to bits. Poor gobbets! The wild men speared like fish and bore away. So okay, they eat the men. They just throw boulders at them, and then whoever's left in the water after the ships have been crashed, they spear and then grab to eat. But long before it ended in the anchorage, havoc and slaughter, I had drawn my sword and cut my own ship's cable. So you see something about Odysseus here. He has moored his ship further down and he's like, come on, man, let's get out of here. Cuts the rope and he's gone. He doesn't try to save his men. Now you might say, well, he made a good decision. At least he saved his own ship. I don't know. Men, I shouted, man the oars and pull till your hearts break if you would put this butchery behind. The oarsmen rent the sea in mortal fear, and my ship spurted out of range, far out from that deep cannon where the rest were lost. So we fared onward, and death fell behind, and we took breath to grieve for our companions. So once they're safe, then they will take some time to mourn for everybody who died. All right, line 149-ish. Our next landfall was on Aea, island of Circe, dire, beauty, and divine. Sister of baleful Aeetes, like him, fathered by Helios, the light of mortals on Perse, child of the ocean stream. I guess I should move my slide along. So that's the wrap up on the Lastrygonians. So they come to Aea. This is Circe's island. Our text spells it with K's. You'll also see it with C's. So basically, she is the granddaughter of the ocean. Helios, the sun god, who has the land with the cattle that the men eat and then anger him, and so none of them make it home, married Perse, who is the daughter of the ocean, and they have two children, Circe and Aeetes. So that's the little story on that. Okay, just so you know, Circe is a witch. So we came, washed in our silent ship upon her shore, and found a cove, a haven for the ship. Some god invisible conned us in. We landed to lie down in that place 2 days and nights, worn out and sick at heart, tasting our grief. But when dawn set another day a shining, I took my spear and broadsword, and I climbed a rocky point above the ship for sight or sound of human labor. Gazing out from that high place over a land of thicket, oaks, and wide watercourses, I could see a smoke wisp from the woodland hall of Circe. So I took counsel with myself. Should I go inland, scouting out that reddish smoke? No, better not, I thought. But first return to waterside and ship and give the men breakfast before I sent them to explore. Now, as I went down quite alone and came a bowshot from the ship, some god's compassion set a big buck in motion to cross my path. Okay, so in case you didn't catch it, there's a couple instances there where Odysseus believes the gods have done certain things. The first one was that some god conned us in, like some god was in charge of them actually landing here on Circe's island. And then some god sent a deer in front of his path so that he was able to shoot and kill it. So this belief that, the gods are in control of their lives and make everything happen for them. Okay, so the big buck crosses his path. A stag with noble antlers pacing down from pasture in the woods to the riverside, as long thirst and the power of sun constrained him. He started from the bush and wheeled. I hit him square in the spine midway along his back, and the bronze point broke through it. In the dust he fell and whinnied as life bled away. I set one foot against him, pulling hard to wrench my weapon from the wound, then left it butt end on the ground. I plucked some withies and twined a double strand into a rope enough to tie the hocks of my huge trophy. Then pick-a-back, I lugged him to the ship, leaning on my long spear shaft. I could not haul that mighty carcass on one shoulder. Beside the ship, I let him drop and spoke gently and low to each man standing near. So he just trussed up the deer by its legs and threw it over his shoulders and piggybacked it back to the ship. Come, friends, though hard beset, we'll not go down into the house of death before our time. As long as food and drink remain aboard, let us rely on it, not die of hunger. So keep in mind, Odysseus went off exploring, and the men have been sitting there just kind of mourning everybody that they lost and kind of despairing, thinking we're all going to end up dead with this Odysseus here. So he takes their mind off of it. He brings back this buck and they have wine and everything like that. And he's very sneaky. He feeds them and then he proposes this idea of, oh, I saw some smoke. Let's go check it out. At this, those faces, cloaked in desolation upon the waste sea beach, were bared. Their eyes turned toward me and the mighty trophy, lighting, foreseeing pleasure one by one, so hands were washed to take what heaven sent us. I love that detail that they actually washed their hands first. And all that day, until the sun went down, we had our fill of venison and wine. Till after sunset, in the gathering dusk, we slept at last above the line of breakers. When the young dawn with fingertips of rose made heaven bright, I called them round and said, shipmates, companions in disastrous time, oh, my dear friends, where dawn lies, and the west, and where the great sun light of men may go under the earth by night, and where he rises, of these things we know nothing. Do we know any least thing to serve us now, I wonder? He's trying to make them curious. All that I saw when I went up the rock was one more island in the boundless main, a low landscape covered with woods and scrub, and puffs of smoke ascending in mid-forest. They were all silent, but their hearts contracted, remembering Antiphates the Lastrygon, and that prodigious cannibal, the Cyclops. They cried out, and the salt tears wet their eyes, but seeing our time for action lost in weeping, I mustered those Achaeans under arms, counting them off in 2 platoons, myself and my godlike Eurylochus commanding. We shook lots in a soldier's dogskin cap, and his came bounding out. Valiant Eurylochus! So off he went with 22 companions, weeping, as mine wept too, who stayed behind. So Odysseus doesn't really pay attention to his men. The guys who stay behind are weeping. The guys who are going are weeping. They don't want to do this. They would just like to get off this island. But no, Odysseus has to find out what's causing the smoke. So we get to this sort of theme of entrapment that happens over and over again in the Odyssey. So Eurylochus is the one who ends up going with 22 men. 171, about line 228. In the wild wood, they found an open glade around a smooth stone house, the hall of Circe, and wolves and mountain lions lay there, mild in her soft spell, fed on her drug of evil. None would attack. Oh, it was strange, I tell you. But switching their long tails, they faced our men like hounds, who look up when their master comes with tidbits for them, as he will, from table. Humbly, those wolves and lions with mighty paws fawned on our men who met their yellow eyes and feared them. In the entranceway they stayed to listen there, inside her quiet house. They heard the goddess Circe. Low she sang in her beguiling voice, while on her loom she wove ambrosial fabric, sheer and bright, by that craft known to the goddesses of heaven. No one would speak until Polites, most faithful and likable of my officers, said, Dear friends, no need for stealth. Here's a young weaver singing a pretty song to set the air a-tingle on these lawns and paven courts. Goddess she is, or lady. Shall we greet her?